Okay, so we're here on episode 300, a massive milestone. Very, very excited to do something a little bit different today, and the first episode of Ask AV, where we've collected some questions from the Facebook group, on Instagram DMs, on Q&A within Instagram, and we're going to answer a bunch of questions covering a variety of topics, as you've seen as you've collected the notes. So Chandy's going to be putting me under the spotlight with some questions which I have seen before, which I'm looking forward to answering. So without further ado, here's episode 300.
Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions. I've just written them out on my phone. So collected 8, which I'm going to be asking in today's podcast. So let's dive straight in. So first question. Akash from 2010. What advice would you give him? What was his view of the world and what changed?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So Akash in 2010, I was 18, so I was 18 years old. What was my view of the world, and what would I tell? What advice would I give him? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing I'd say to him is, firstly, you're on the right path. So at 18, I knew what I wanted to do. So I'd say you're on the right path, Akash. But I would say, try and enjoy the next 12 years a bit more. Allow yourself to have fun, allow yourself to enjoy life as it comes, and don't take things too seriously. You can work hard, as you ended up doing, but don't work hard at the detriment of your mental health or your own health. So I think that would be the headline statement I'd tell my younger self. I would also say to let go of I talk about the parental expectations and that area of my mindset that I've worked on a lot in the most recent couple of years, where I had this perception that I had to live up to a certain expectation from the generation above. But I think if I was to let go of that a lot earlier, I think it would have saved me a lot of self-destruction mentally, where I thought I need to push harder. Where I think if I let go of that a lot earlier, I think I would have been able to enjoy much more of the journey. That would be one of them. And then the other thing I'd say is allow myself to feel more, and don't be afraid to tell your loved ones you love them. This is obviously something that I've always found difficult. So I think that's something you taught me a lot right from the get-go. I remember hearing you saying I love you to your mum pretty much from the get-go, and I was like, that's weird. I don't really say that. And I don't know if it's the guy thing or if it's actually a thing for me to work on personally, but I think that would be another thing is try and try and experience the emotions a bit more rather than just sort of burying it. I think being able to bury my emotions has been a gift and a curse. A gift in that it allows you to push through difficult periods or perceived difficult periods, but it's a curse in that you don't actually experience. You become quite binary, quite black and white. You don't really quite experience the beauty in life.
What do you think you would have done differently than if you'd had implemented that? Because you talk about mental health there, you talk about enjoying things, you talk about love.
What would I have done differently? I think I would have. Well, the thing is, when I look back, I would have done anything differently. I'm like, I don't know if I would have. The only thing I always say to you is I wish I'd done a gap year.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I think I've said to you a few times is I wish I'd done a gap year when I was younger, and done sort of the whole backpacker. But that's probably because I've just seen the benefits had on you. I don't know if I'd have enjoyed it or not. I might have done it and hated it.
It's not for everyone.
So I don't know, right? I'd say the gap years are probably the only thing I'd have done differently. But apart from that, I've not really had many years I'm like, oh, that wasn't me. I feel like I lived quite intentionally and I've always done what I wanted to do. I think what it would have stopped me, what that piece of advice would have helped potentially with is not always feeling like I need to grind, not always feeling like I need to beat myself up if I'm not working, and potentially now 10, 12 years in, where your dopamine pathways are completely shot, in that. Sorry, not my dopamine, but my serotonin pathway is completely shot. So, and I'm just driving that dopamine hit of work. and that's quite a hard thing to rewire at this stage, I think. But I think I'm working on it. I think I'm getting better at it. But then I don't know, like, if I didn't do that, would I be in a different place now? I don't know. It's impossible to answer that, right? But I think that would be the main thing. Let go of the parental expectations and try and feel and love more. I think I would have experienced the journey a bit better. Interesting.
So how are you making the changes now?
I'm just looking at, because I actually thought about this one earlier, the 20-year-old self. The other thing I put here, because I thought it was a useful journal session, another thing I put here was that, don't take things personally, and just try and accept and move on as much as possible. Like, just accept things as they come and move on, move on, and just have faith it'll work out. Again, another lesson I've learned from you. That I think if I learnt that at an earlier age, I think it would have saved a lot of sort of rumination, thinking about things over and over again. Where could I have done better? Where could I have been better? That area of my mindset would have been, I think, a lot more healthy.
Okay.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's interesting that you say that you look back and you don't think, would you have been where you are and right now if you had done those things or changed? Because since I've known you, we always do like a recap at the end of the year, and you always say, yeah, this year was better than last year. Yeah, this year was better than last year. And also, it's almost like the improvements are there every year, regardless of this piece that we're talking about now. So it always feels like you're having a good year in your own right, whatever that is for you, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think I've always I've never really done anything I didn't want to do, and I've always enjoyed life, and I've always enjoyed whatever the goal is at the time. I think where I just probably beat myself up probably too much in different areas, which I think I'm getting better at.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you asked what did I do, what have I done differently for that?
Yeah.
I think it's just might have just come with age. I think some of it may have just come with age, but then again, I think a lot of it is just having an awareness of some of these areas and just trying to really work on them. Yeah, I think those would be the bits.
Okay, and then there's a bit around what was your view on the world back then and what has changed?
Yeah. What was my view of the world when I was 18 years old? I think I thought the only thing about life was work at the time. I was going into university thinking, why are you smiling at?
Because it's just... It's just interesting, like thinking back to when I was 18, I was like, gosh, what was I even thinking?
Yeah, I don't know what I was exactly thinking, but I remember I remember just thinking I just thought the only game was work. I thought, okay, I'm using university, get my personal trainer qualification, get my degree in sports science, and just get cracking. After 1 year of university, I was ready to leave. I could have left easily, but after the first year, I look back and thought, maybe I didn't maximize university as much as I could have. But I don't know. Like, again, it's like, well, what would have been the trade-off? So, what was my view on the world? I think I just thought it very narrow-minded. It was just work hard and get your grades, and I was in that mentality.
Yeah.
And then go out in the world and do my thing, which is what I always wanted to do. At the time, was be a personal trainer. Yeah.
There's a lot of conditioning at that age as well around what next steps are and what we should be doing.
Yeah, and the conditioning, it was, and whilst I'd broken the whole law thing, I think the conditioning was more like work. The idea of doing anything, like the idea of doing a travelling gap year wasn't even on my radar. Didn't even think that was possible. Yeah. I didn't even know anyone who did that, so... Yeah, I only found that out in my mid-20s. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. So let's move on to then question number 2, and let's move forward 50 years. So what advice would you give to your 80-year-old self right now?
No, the other way around.
What advice would your 80-year-old self give to you right now?
Yeah, what would I give my 80-year-old self? I think the biggest thing I'm trying to learn right now, which has actually come from me thinking about the future a lot more, is just try and be stable, whether it's good or bad. So I think in spiritual texts they call it equanimity, where a good example is whether you make profit or whether you make loss, your baseline mood is exactly the same. Now that's a business context, but it can be applied in anything. Whether there's whether you have a high or a low, you just got a baseline level of peace. I think that's probably the thing I'm trying to work towards as much as it's probably like my biggest mental health focus right now. And I think my 8-year-old self would tell me that most things are not gonna make a difference in the future. So there's no point in ruminating on it, thinking about it over the top, and just moving forward with it. That's probably the biggest thing, because if we really think about what we think about on a day-to-day basis and what we worry about on a day-to-day basis, the reality is it's not going to be an issue in 10 years time, or 5 years time, or even probably a month's time.
Yeah.
But it can linger. These things can linger for ages. So I think that'll be another one. Again, this is another one that I think I did during a journal session, and this was a big one. It's like, and something I think about a lot, and we talk about it, and it blows our minds. And so we're only here for a fraction of the time. Like my 8-year-old self would say to me, like, we're literally here for like 8 years, and it's such a short period of time in the grand scheme of things. The only thing is to firstly do whatever you want to do, but also to enjoy the experience, and that happiness is a choice. I finally accepted that in the last year or so. I always thought you had to like be smiling around the place, bouncing off the walls. Whereas what I'm learning more and more is that it's just a choice to, you can experience it at any moment. That was one thing I put a lot here. And then the other one actually is don't endlessly search for all the answers. So one thing I'm guilty of is always looking externally for answers, or looking elsewhere for answers. Oh, there's a shiny object there, this person might have the answer, that thing might have the answer. And my older self would say, just keep looking within. Just keep looking within. Like I actually saw there, like, you've got it all within you. You just need to keep looking within, asking the right questions, figuring out yourself, and you'll get the answers. Yeah, you might not get it as quick, but you'll get the answer that's right for you. That one's coming up a lot. The other thing I actually think about is, one thing I wrote, I was like, you're doing your thing right now. Like my 8-year-old self would say to me, you're doing the thing right now, which is your thing, but the true thing is yet to really reveal itself.
Interesting.
I don't know why I think about this recently. It's like, and it's connected to what we're doing, but it's like, it's on a grander level, or it's on a deeper level, or it's on a slightly potentially different path. But I was thinking about this often recently. It's like, is this the thing, or is there another thing that's yet to reveal itself? But this is the thing this is the thing I'm doing for this part of my life. And then potentially there's another thing that's coming that's going to be the thing for me. And I don't know, like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but that's come in my thoughts quite often recently. It's like, there's something else. You just got to, your path will take you there, but it just hasn't come yet. Its time hasn't come.
What kind of thing are you talking about? Is that like a mindset? Is that a career thing? Is that what?
I think it's probably related to like purpose, gift,
okay,
genius, or whatever you want to call it. Like the thing I'm good at, or the thing I'm here to do. Yes, it's revolved around what we're doing. Physical is the vehicle, transformation. But it's like there's something we haven't tapped into yet. But I don't know the answer to that. The thing that keeps coming to me is like, yeah, just stay the path and it will reveal itself.
So it's just a little inkling that you have.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Just this like weird gut feeling.
I like that, and I always say follow your gut, so that's good.
It doesn't mean we need to change anything we're doing. That's the beauty of it. It's just like keep doing what you're doing, but be open to the idea that it could either drastically or very like subtly change.
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing that came out. Yeah. And then just say yes more. Just keep saying yes more. That's again come from you a lot more. But those are the things I say when I think about what I'd say to my older self, or what my older self would say to me now. Those are the things that keep coming up. These questions were asked by Ricky in the Facebook group. He asked about 2030, but I thought I'd just take it to another level and think about 2080.
Oh wow.
Yeah, those would be my answers.
I think it's interesting, the second point around you saying to look within, because these days it's so easy to get distracted by everything that's happening around you, all the external sources that are taking place, that you're seeing, that you're exposed to, and it's just really maintaining like the path that you're on, and you're doing this for a reason and continuing on with it. So that's a really good realization, and something that I see that you're doing more of, because your true power is there. It's all within.
I think it's something for anyone to take away is you have to carve, and we were speaking about with a friend yesterday, it's about carving out more time to figure these things out, because otherwise you can just get swept away by the day after day, day after day, day after day. The next thing you know, 10 years have gone past, and you're on the same treadmill over and over again. I think we're fortunate in what we do as a team as well, internally as a team, in that it never feels like a day just like ticks along. We're just ticking a box. It always feels like there's a new challenge, there's a new thing to think about. Yeah, we're not running on autopilot in both our life and professionally and personally.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Next question.
Okay, number 3. This is from someone, I'm assuming you're a member, but how do I manage eating out with friends and family and sticking to my plan? Especially with Christmas around the corner, I'm worried I'm going to go off track.
Yeah, this is a eating out and figuring out how to eat out and still make progress on your fitness journey is like one of the most common questions we get. You know, pretty much every time someone's inquiring about RNT, it's like, well, can I still eat out? Will I still be able to socialise? And then even when you start, I've got this social event coming out, what do I do? I'm travelling here, what do I do? And was the question like how, eating out and lose weight?
Yeah, so how do I manage eating out with family and friends and sticking to my plan?
Sticking to your plan. So let's assume you're not in the final stage of hitting that checkpoint, which is the best shape of your life. You're not in the grind phase, where if you're eating out out of choice in the grind phase, you're probably not going to get the results that you want. That's just the first caveat. So let's assume that you're not in the grind phase and you're either early on in process phase, or you're just trying to maintain your results long term. I think there's a couple of key things that you don't want to do. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to starve yourself all day. You don't want to starve yourself all day long, think, oh, I've got a big meal tonight, because all that's going to happen is you're going to turn up and you're probably going to lose control as soon as the smells start hitting you. You see the menu, you see the bread basket, you see what other people have got. Next thing you're picking at that, picking at this, and you're just so hungry that you need to let go. So that's the thing you don't want to do. You don't want to starve yourself all day. And the second thing you want to do is you want to remember that the food is always going to be there. Like, food's not going anywhere in the world, right? You're always going to have. Luckily, we are fortunate that food is in abundance in our society, in the Western world. The problem is not in abundance. The problem is that we don't have control of it. So remembering that food is always going to be there, there's always going to be an opportunity to have it again, can just shift your mindset around eating out, eating out with family and friends, because you're not going to just treat it like your last meal on earth and the last supper. So that's another mindset shift you want to have. And the third thing is just to get real smart with your choices. So this is a learning process that happens over months and years. And there's 2 aspects to it. There's a tangible nutritional education that you need to learn, and there's the intangible identity shift. So starting with the identity shift, it's really you have to think and become someone who eats healthy, thinks healthy, wants to be healthy, and from that, when you have that mindset and identity, you will then naturally not binge, naturally not overeat. Okay, that's one thing, but that takes a long time to get to. The way you get there is through nutritional education and trial and error. So this is where understanding protein, fats, carbs, what they look like in different foods, what different food makeups are, all that, how that all fits together. That's an integral part of it. And then there is going to be an element of trial and error. You're going to get things wrong sometimes. You can get things right sometimes. But you'll learn how your body responds to different foods, how good you are at guesstimating, and over time you'll be able to eyeball things roughly and be able to make simple swaps. So for example, if you normally have chicken and rice at home, when you go out and let's say you're trying to maintain your weight or trying to lose a bit of weight, you may go for chicken or some sort of protein with vegetables, and you're not going to get the carbs because you know there's extra fats and oils and all these things in the meat. So you just go with something like that, and that's a simple swap that can be very easily done on a day-to-day basis. So I think the simple swap is a really good way, and then it's building out nutritional education as you go along. Anything you'd like to add to that? Because I think you've been someone who's mastered it over the years.
I say mastered, naturally. The only thing is I've only recently learned since joining RNT about nutrition.
Yeah.
So prior to that, I was just getting on with it and eating accordingly and never really overeaten, but that's just been me.
Yeah.
And now I've learnt more about, okay, I need to fuel my body with proteins and I need to eat certain more vegetables that I never used to really eat, or fruits. So that's helped me. But it's funny you talk about mistakes, because literally I'm still learning, because this week I made a vegan lasagna, and I was just there like, oh my god, this whole lasagna has like 50 grams of protein in it. And I got really excited that I'd made a high protein dish. And then he comes up, because he comes up, reads the nutrition information. He was like, actually, this only has 20 grams for the whole thing. I was like, what? How does that even? So he was teaching me about the nutritional information at the back of the pack, because I wasn't sure if it was dry weight, cooked weight. I just got quite confused with it. So there's always going to be some errors, but it's a learning process, and it does take a lot of time. So
yeah, and then when you're actually in the scenario of eating out, the big thing is understanding portion control, because look, you're not going to get the exact calories. It's just not going to happen. And it depends on where you are on the journey. If you're on the route to your checkpoint, you want to minimize it as much as possible. Like, trying to guesstimate, you're not going to get it right. If you're going to eat out multiple times a week, you're not going to get the results. Like, it's very rarely going to happen for someone who's a beginner or even early on in the journey. Every time I want to get shredded, I don't eat out every 3 times a week. It's just not going to happen. I'll just minimize the times I do eat out. When I do, I'll pick places that make sense. So picking places where you can judge the nutritional information, it's good foods, that makes a big difference. And when you're actually at the event itself, then I think paying attention to meal hygiene is really important. So having 15 to 20 chews of your food, putting your knife and fork down between the meals, spending at least 15-20 minutes at the meal, focusing on the conversation rather than the plate. All these things can make a big difference in, firstly, your satiety levels, your digestion levels, but also naturally how much you actually consume. If you take your time with your food, you're less likely to stuff yourself. Obviously not a proven formula, but it helps a lot. All these things, when you combine it, will really, really help.
Okay, let's move on to question number 4. How do I avoid rebounding after I get into shape? I always lose a few pounds and gain it back straight away. I'm fed up.
Yeah, so this is not the first time I've heard this question. So how do you avoid the rebound? So I think there's typically, the biggest reasons I see for rebounding are, number one, not realizing that when you get into the shape of your life, it's not the end. Because it's just, that's why we call it a checkpoint, because it is a checkpoint in your journey. The second thing is not having a plan for what comes after, i.e. what we have, the consolidation phase. And the third thing is, third reason why people fall off is dropping all their accountability mechanisms. So for example, in 2014, the story I always tell, I gained 7 kilos in 7 days and I gained 13 kilos in 6 weeks. What did I do wrong? I had a coach at the time. I stopped checking in. I stopped taking pictures. I stopped weighing myself, except on those milestones, which I remembered. Because someone said to me, have you weighed yourself? I was like, nah, I think I'm just building loads of muscle. Obviously I had no idea, completely ignorant. Stopped weighing myself. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have an idea, didn't have a clue what to do afterwards. So those 4 things combined led to an absolute disaster. So if you're dieting, you're losing weight, you're gaining back, you're losing weight, the first thing to do is have a proper consolidation plan. So we have consolidation phase R&T, which is phase 3, which comes straight after the process phase where you get into the shape of your life. And in that phase, the goal is to effectively regain control of your satiety, your mood, your energy, etc. Avoid any rebound. Bring your calories back to a good amount, which is not going to be that much higher for most people. Reduce the activity, but generally just feel better. Those are like sort of the X's and O's of how consolidation happens. But I think the keys here are accepting that you're going to gain a little bit of weight. That's okay. Like your shape of your life is not going to be the same as shape for life. That's the first thing to accept. The second thing is to keep your accountability mechanisms. So if you're using a coach or you're working with us, keep checking in, keep tracking daily, keep by tracking on the platform daily, keep taking your pictures. All these things are going to help you stay on track. And then the third thing really is realizing now this is where the hard work begins. Getting in shape is easy, staying in shape is a whole different ballgame. And what you got to do now is you got to start rewiring your behavior, mindset, and identity. And now we're talking more long-term investment phase. But the reason why people yo-yo, they lose weight, they gain it back, lose weight, gain it back, is because when you lose weight and you go from, say, 60 kilos to 40 kilos, as an example, when you lose that 20 kilos, you might have lost 20 kilos and you're now 40 kilos, but your brain and your actions and your identity is still wrapped up as a 60 kilo person. Because all you've done is a temporary physical change. Now you need to make a permanent mindset, identity, and behavioral change, and change the way you think. So you act, eat, move like a 40 kilo person, not like a 60 kilo person. So when you go back into social occasions without a prize, you don't have this big prize anymore of a photo shoot or a holiday or a wedding or whatever it may be. You don't just revert back to your old behaviours of having 10 pints or a bottle of wine or whatever it may be. You actually have to consciously change the way you approach things. So that's the big identity shift, and that's where people struggle. I'd say the other reason why people struggle in consolidation and with constant rebound is from a mindset and mental health perspective. Many of the reasons why people gain weight uncontrollably in the first place is because of some underlying muck or underlying issues that they're using food as a crutch to help solve. Now, when you typically start a journey, you've probably gone through this whole period of whatever the muck is. You gain weight out of control. You now start. You lose the weight, but you've got this prize to work towards, which is your checkpoint. You get into the best shape of your life just by eating less and moving more. And then you haven't really resolved any of these issues. You've become more aware of them because you're aware of like the way you act in different scenarios. You've lost the weight. You haven't dealt with any of these issues. And now that you haven't got this prize, you haven't got this accountability around staying in shape, you just revert slowly back to where you were. We call it the death by 1,000 cuts. And this is the point where instead of using food as a crutch that you may have used to, instead of binging in front of the TV, all these things that you can do when you haven't quite dealt with whatever's underneath, you have to sit with those feelings, solve them, and move forward from it. Because if you don't solve whatever was causing you to use food as a crutch in the first place, you're just going to revert back to the beginning. So there's multi like layers to this. There's the very much like technical aspect, and then there's the deeper layers, which is why most people are rebounding all the time. Anytime you see someone uncontrollably lose or gain weight, there's probably something going on in their head more than anything. If it's done in control, there's obviously a different scenario, like muscle building done in control, fat loss done in control. But when it's out of control, then it's usually some sort of crutch that's developed because of some sort of issue.
That makes sense.
Break that and you break the cycle.
There you go. All right, so question number 5. How do I know whether I should do an upper-lower split, full body workouts, or a more split up routine like push-pull legs?
Okay, so how do I know whether I should do a full body, upper body, lower body, and push-pull legs? So this is more around a question of frequency, training frequency. So a full body workout is typically 3 times a week. Upper body, lower body can be 3 or 4 times, and then push-pull legs is can be either 3 all the way up to 6 times a week. The first question to answer is like, where are you at in your journey? So I think for anyone who wants to get results, the minimum amount of times you want to train is at least 3 times a week. 3 times a week with a full body workout is a really good foundation to start your journey with. So I think for any beginner, anyone new to this, anyone new to having structure in their training and nutrition, starting with 3 full body workouts is a great place to start with. And I like starting with 2 different workouts that you rotate across 3 days. So one day you'll do AB. So one week will be ABA, workout ABA. Following week will be BAB. So you have 2 workouts. Does that make sense? So you have 2 workouts to rotate with. And the reason why I like that is because you can learn exercise very quickly. You can gain the coordination very quickly, and you can get stronger quickly. And you rinse that for as long as you can. And then you may want to do 3 full. You may want to switch from 2 full body workouts to 3 full body workouts. So you have 3 different workouts on each day. And then you can rinse that for as long as you like, if that's what you like. As you get a little bit more advanced, you may want to explore having upper, lower. You may want to split your workouts up into upper body workouts and lower body workouts. I think this is a great way for muscle building, for guys especially who want to train 4 days a week. And women can do it as well. They just probably have to. I think women can do it as well. It really depends on the frequency that you want to train at. So let's say you're doing upper lower. You can do that sort of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or you can do Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And the only difference here is now you're hitting your body parts twice a week instead of 3 times a week.
Mm.
You see that? So your full body workout, you're hitting everything every time. Upper lower, you're now hitting it twice a week. So with that, your intensity will probably be a little bit higher, and your volume will probably be a little bit higher. And by that I mean how much work you do in each session for each body part will be higher, and the intensity you go at. So how heavy you lift, how close to failure you go, they can all go higher as well because you have additional recovery. Does that help? I'm trying to explain it to you as well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's the question that you might ask.
Yeah.
Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yep. So upper body workouts, upper lower splits is something you can rinse pretty much for the rest of your training career. I still train on an upper lower split. I do chest, back, shoulders on one day, and I do legs and arms on the other day. I've used that split for years, and it's still my favorite split, and I can use that for as long as I want to. That can work on training either 3 days a week, where you go upper, lower, upper one week, lower, upper, lower the other week, or you can go 4 days a week, like I mentioned. Now, the step up after that is splitting your workouts even more. I personally like to train body parts every 3 to 5 days. So the most I would split it up is potentially 3 ways. So, for example, push, pull, legs. And if you do that, you can either train 4 or 5 times a week. You just rotate it. So it may go, you may pick your train, if you're doing 4 days a week, it may be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday are your days, and you just rotate push, pull, legs across that. So each week will be slightly different. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And then, or you could do push, pull, off, legs, off, and then repeat the cycle. I just think it gets really complicated because you're already looking complicated, right?
No, it's like, actually making notes.
Yeah. So it gets confusing because the days of the week change every week. But this is a good example of someone, it's a good split for someone who's potentially more advanced, wants to split their body up a bit more, knows how to apply intensity, knows good form, wants to add a bit more volume in. But I don't use it much for sort of the everyday person. I think for the everyday person, someone who's busy, time strapped, juggling tons of things, the aim of the game is to keep it simple, lock in the same training days each week, and probably limit it to around 3-4 days a week. I think the more you split it up, the more days you probably need a week. And the only time I like using more frequent days is for people who have low stress and they can handle the additional stimulus. But I think otherwise 3 to 4 seems like the perfect balance between stimulus and recovery.
Okay. So moving on to number 6, I don't have time to cook during the day, so how do I still stick to my nutrition plan? I'm also on the road a lot. What can I do to help?
What can I do to help? Okay. So I'm struggling. So just repeat the first bit.
I don't have time to cook during the day.
Okay.
So how do I stick to my nutrition plan?
Okay, so I don't have time to cook during the day. If you're someone who's commuting on a day-to-day basis, and you're someone who is always busy, very busy in the daytime, and you're not at home, you're traveling, you're commuting a lot, then you need to get into some sort of meal prepping system. Like, if you're not meal prepping, you're setting yourself up for failure. I think one of the best habits people who stay in shape long term have is some sort of meal prepping system in some form. Like, it'll vary. Some people will cook everything on a Sunday, and that way they're set up for the week. So if you're traveling on the go, if you don't have time in the day, you're set up. Other people may want to just cook proteins, so they may just cook their meat or their tofu or their tempeh or their beans or whatever it may be. We do, for example, we batch cook beans, right? Batch cook beans and
lentils,
because cooking that every day is just the time drain, whereas you cook it once for 4 or 5 days at a time. Other people only cook their rice. So whatever your system is, you'll find that as you go through this journey more and more. So for us personally, we like batch cooking rice, edamame pasta, lentils, and
that's it. Tempeh and vegetables are fresh.
That's probably it. But if we were when I was working in the city, then I would batch cook every couple of days for all my meals, for some things, and then the meat I would cook every morning. I had this weird system, but back then I would wake up, I knew exactly what I was going to cook the night before, so I marinate everything in the fridge, and then I'd wake up, I'd put everything in the oven, and and then I'd go for it all took like 30 minutes exactly. So in that time, when it was in the oven, I'd go for a shower, go to the toilet, brush my teeth, get changed, and I had to make it exactly back in 28 minutes, take it out, put the rice in the thing, pack up the Tupperwares and go to work. Then I'll be back 16 hours later, put it in the washer and repeat the whole system. I prefer doing it on a day-to-day basis, but other people I know do it weekly, bi-weekly. I think the key is you're going to have to learn some sort of meal prepping system. Unless you have the flexibility of a schedule completely on your own terms and you work at home at all times and you have all the time to do this, then the idea of cooking fresh every single meal is not going to happen. The other thing is you want to consider what are quick meals. So we cook, if you think about for us, we cook our breakfast and afternoon snacks are very quick to make, right?
5 minutes or so.
Porridge, protein powder, peanut butter, banana. Takes 2 minutes to prepare, 5 minutes to cook, 10-15 minutes to eat. It's a quick meal. Similarly, breakfast, tofu scramble, avocado and toast. Could meal prep it if you wanted to, but it takes 5 minutes to make it.
Yeah.
It's worth having it. It's worth that time. So, but if you're spending 30 minutes per meal, then suddenly it's just not convenient, and you're not gonna. It's not gonna be consistent. You're not gonna be able to be consistent on something as elaborate as that sort of meal prepping system. So you need to know a meal prepping system, but then you also need to consider what's convenient, practical, and then of course tastes good as well.
Yeah, that's very true.
Anything you'd add to that?
I think meal prepping is something that has really helped in the way we cook and saving time, but it's not something I think I did before. I always used to like to try different things but also cook every single day, but I've just realised more and more that it's just not feasible, because when it comes to it and you can't be bothered to cook and it's just like I'll just get takeaway. And I've been there before. I'm like, it's 6 o'clock, I'll just get takeaway, and actually that's not where you want to be. Like right now I know our food is ready, it's in the fridge. I just need to cook a few things which might take 10 minutes and we're good to go for dinner, because we're going to finish work late. So it's almost like, okay, that works really well.
And this is why I think meal plans are so much more beneficial than like changing your meal plans every day. Because when you have a set meal plan, no matter what stage of the journey you're at, and you're busy, you're thinking about tons of things, you got loads of other things to get done in the day, the idea of thinking about, it's like, I know what I'm going to have after we record this podcast. I'm going to have oats, protein powder, banana, frozen berries, dark chocolate, peanut butter. It's the same thing every day. I never have to think about that. But if every day I was like, what should I have for a snack? It's like the thought process that goes involved in that, the chances of you going wrong, and winging it on the day, I've never seen it work. And variety is a weird thing where before someone joins a place like R&T, where we're big believers in limiting decision fatigue, because we only have a limited amount of decisions each day. Most people are eating the similar sort of foods every day anyway. Having Weetabix with milk for lunch, for breakfast, have a sandwich at lunch, and then they have some sort of dinner that they cook on every day. They're eating pretty much the same thing anyway. But now once you say, I eat the same thing, once you're told that, it's like, nah, I want variety, I want this. And variety is great, but save it for dinner, save it for the weekends. Don't and I'm assuming most people listening to this are busy and have lots of things going on, but don't try and add loads of variety in the daytime. I've never seen it work with everyone we've helped, and I think it causes more problem than the excitement of having something different.
And one other thing I'd probably add for us is that we have a certain amount of recipes that we make, and we just rotate them. And that really helps, because when you're cooking, it's like, I'm going to make jerk tofu for the next 3-4 days, and then I'm going to make lentils and a vegetable curry for the next few days, and knowing that it's like, what I need to buy is XYZ, and boom, you've got it, and it's just right there, and you cook that meal, and you know you're going to cook it on that day. So I already know what I need to cook today, and it makes it so much easier than getting to the kitchen and thinking, what do I want for dinner?
And if you rotate a few recipes, and each one you batch cook for dinner, so you rotate, let's say you have 5 different recipes which you make 3 days worth of, you've potentially got 15 days, so 3 days in a row, one thing, 3 days. You don't have to have that meal again for 16 days. So if you like variety, that's a really good way to do it.
And what about the last bit to this question was, I'm on the road a lot, so what can I do to help?
So if you're on the road and you just need to batch cook in a way where you can take your food with you. So packing Tupperwares, and also just looking at quick easy fixes like blending protein, oats, peanut butter, banana as an example. Blend up in the morning. If you're driving, you just keep that in your car and just sip it when the time's right. The other thing is, like, if you're absolutely against meal prepping, is if you're on the road a lot, you know, understanding what's good foods you can eat at Marks and Spencer's, or you know, good healthy places that you can stop at, and looking in advance what you're going to buy, not like what you fancy buying on the aisles when you're hungry and think, oh yeah, I'll get a croissant, get a couple of bars of chocolate. That's not going to happen. You need to know exactly what you're going to get beforehand. I don't really recommend this, but I'm just trying to consider all angles.
That's good. It makes sense. And we're lucky that most places have the calories on there as well, nutrition information.
Yeah.
So it makes choices a little, I guess, easier at times. Okay. So moving on to the next question, number 7. What is your biggest struggle as a CEO, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest struggle, I'd say right now.
Right now, okay.
is, I think you know the answer, right?
Go on.
So the biggest struggle is probably around delegation.
Yeah.
I think it's been a historical issue for me. I've always struggled to let go, always struggled to delegate effectively. I always assume I've said everything in my head. So if I let's say I'm trying to delegate something to you and say, look, this idea is really good, let's make it happen. In my head, I've already told you the whole thing, but in your head, or in the reality, not in your head, in reality, I've literally just said to you like 3 sentences with no context and nothing else around it, and then it's like, what do you want me to do with this? So the biggest thing I'm trying to learn, and the biggest struggle I have, is slowing down. All right, clear definition of what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, what's the strategy around it, when does it need to be done by, and then be like, okay, this is ready to be delegated, rather than just sort of like firing it off a million miles an hour. The other one, like, which probably links quite close to this, is just the idea fairy. I think I've always struggled with the idea fairy, but I think I'm never going to not be an idea fairy. I think that's just my natural, like, by that I mean just coming up with loads of ideas. I'm always going to come up with loads of ideas. The discipline is controlling which ones actually make it through the but that's what you're here
to help with that.
I'll come up with 20 new ideas. 19 would be crap, but 1 would be game changing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just about continuing to do that and just having the discipline to say no to the 19.
Yeah.
And not getting excited, falling down rabbit holes, spending hours researching this idea, and then I come and tell you, and you're like, nah, we're not doing that.
I know that happens quite frequently. It's like, no, I don't do that. But the piece that you said around delegation is interesting, because that's how I like to receive my tasks if I'm being delegated something. However, everyone works in a very different way, and every single team member of ours is very different in the way that the personality, the way they receive information, the way they process information, and it's just being aware of that. So for someone who might just want 1 sentence on Slack to say, can you do this, done, and they'll just get on with it, rather someone else might want someone like, okay, where do I get that from? When do you want this by? What's the deadline? And I think I'm one of those people who needs to know, like, okay, you want this doing, great. When do you want this by? Is it the end of the week? Is it the end of the day? Like, what kind of, I need a bit more from it. So everyone's very different in the way they receive that information or the way they are delegated to. And it's the same for when I'm delegating as well. So I'd rather just give it all and then nothing. I always say to you, when I'm delegating, I know I've done it successfully when the person I'm delegating to has 0 questions. When I say, is it all clear? They're like, yeah. Whereas when you delegate, and I'm just like, but what does that mean? And when do you want this by? And what exactly is that? Where can I find that? Yeah, and then it's just, then you just know.
15 questions back, I'm like, I shouldn't even bother.
Yeah, then you know that actually I haven't quite delegated that correctly. So it's always about giving the right amount of information to someone so that they don't have any questions, because everything's clear. Everything's pretty much laid out to them, and it shouldn't even take that long from your end to do, because it's already in your head. It's just translating that into text.
So that's the thing I probably struggle with the most is to delegation and just having discipline around ideas.
Okay. And then the last but not least question.
So one thing. So just one more thing on that. One thing that I think we as a team have consensus on for like 2023 is we don't need new things. We don't need new ideas. We just need to execute and make everything we have better. And I thought, I'm gonna have to be really disciplined to make this happen, but it actually sounds quite liberating not to have to worry about having so many different ideas.
Yeah, I think it's so important to focus on what we're currently doing and just to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Rather than starting something, things that we've started this year but haven't necessarily finished, like that's what we need to work on. because it's fine like with all these new ideas, but I agree with you, like you can't just keep starting new things or having new ideas. Like let's finish what we've got. So ready for question 8? Final question. Okay, so what have 300 episodes of podcasting taught you about yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. So 300 episodes. Firstly, I think that's a pretty good milestone. I actually googled yesterday. I typed in Google, how many podcasts have 300 or more episodes? Because I was like, surely there can't be that many. But I didn't really get a proper answer, so I couldn't get that. But apparently, like 50% of podcasts just have one episode.
Oh so wow, I didn't know that.
So that's what's, when people say, oh, there's millions and millions of podcasts, but that stat actually skews a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing it's taught me is I think I'm just good at being consistent. Like 300 episodes, we started in November 2017. It's 5 years pretty much of one a week, sometimes twice a week. 305. Yeah, so 5 years of 52 weeks is 260 odd. So it's been averaging just over once a week for 5 years straight. So what it's taught me is, I don't think we've missed a week as well. I don't think we've ever missed a week. There's always been something we put out there, sometimes twice a week. I think what it's taught me is a few things. One is consistency is something I really value. Second thing is it reinforces my belief that we should make better free content than people's paid. Because I think our podcast is so valuable for so many people at different stages of the journey. There tends to be 3 types of podcasts we do. It's the team podcasts, which I think are really educational, like so much gold inside of those. There's the member Hall of Fames, which I think are incredible inspiration, and I think we've done, it must be over 100 now of those. And then there's bringing on guests externally, and I'd say, and then there's the ones I do solo, or like these sorts of ones. So we've always put something out there, and I think if someone wants to go through all these episodes, they've got all the tools they need to transform their body and transform their life for the rest of their life and continue to make improvements.
Yeah.
I think I've really enjoyed like the team podcast where we just bust myths and break beliefs and just bounce off one another and really add value to people's lives. I really enjoyed the Hall of Fame podcast because I get to see firsthand what we do and the power of what we do, and just listen to people's lives that we've managed to change through RNT's journey. I think they've been really powerful, and it's great that they can inspire other people. And I've enjoyed the guests as well, and just from getting to know more people, making new connections. And I think the podcast, I've been telling you about this recently, the last couple of weeks, is that the podcast for 2023 is one area I really want to focus, want to double down on more, and make it, and really take it to the next level with production, with the quality of the content, get it even better, production, just the whole thing, like the overall experience. I want to level it out. So yeah, I think I've also learned to face my fears around speaking and being on video. Like this is being videoed right now, and 5 years ago I only used to do writing and never did video. I never did video until the end of 2018.
Yeah.
So now going in front of video doesn't scare me. It doesn't excite me, but it doesn't scare me. Like me, I put off videos as much as I can right to the end, and then I'm like
wanting to record this for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've had this I've been moving this in your calendar for 3 weeks. So, but now it's next Monday. I've got to get it out. It's just like it's got to be done. So video has been the thing that wasn't comfortable for me, and still a lot of the videos that I put out on social media. If you saw the blooper reel, it's like it's 5 minutes of me speaking, making mistakes, and then Grace, our editor, turns it into some amazing 60-second clip.
Yeah.
So I think facing the fear around video, but even just speaking, like audio wasn't my thing either. Audio. Writing is definitely the way I communicate best. Audio is my thing. So with the podcast, it's taught me to step out of my comfort zone, and now the idea of speaking and being on video, it doesn't scare me like it did 5 years ago. And I think it's probably the biggest thing I've learned about myself is that you just gotta, if you feel like an imposter or you feel like scared about doing something, you just need to do it enough to make it feel like normal. And my style, if you listen back to it 5 years ago, the style was so different. Before, I'd go into a podcast with like, question number 1, Question number like this basically with a guest, or question number one. I'm gonna go into this. It was very like robotic. I wouldn't follow up. I wouldn't by that I wouldn't follow up with the question, the answer. Sorry. So if I ask you a question, I wouldn't then. I'll just almost discard the answer and just be like, oh, next question.
Yeah, you wouldn't ask
Whereas
questions.
now, I often just come up. I basically just approach an interview with one question, the opening question. I let the rest just carry on. I don't even prepare for it. I just. By that I mean I don't prepare for exactly what I'm going to ask. I just have a few things I'm like, I want to get onto these topics. The thing I need to think about is the opening, and then just take it from there. And the key thing is taught me is listening. It's listening. It's not saying yeah. You know, when people are talking, like saying yep along the way, or like you know, you're just being self-conscious about your own language. I've tried to really work on the filler gaps. I still have these issues, but I always try and work on those filler words that you use. I don't know if you ever thought about that when you did your podcast, but you know when you're saying, kind of like...
When the people say that?
When I'm saying it. Yeah. So I'm trying to cut back on that and improve on my fillers. So, yeah, the power of silence, being quiet, let them talk, let people talk, stop, follow up. I remember I think it was Adam Schaefer of Mind Pump. So they've done like over 1,000 episodes, one of the biggest podcasts in the fitness industry. And after the podcast, I remember being quite nervous trying to interview him because I was like, this guy's obviously a legend in the game, in the podcast game. And I asked him for feedback. It went on for 2 hours, right?
Feedback of the podcast?
No, the podcast. I asked him feedback afterwards, and he said to me, you need to dig deeper into the guests and ask, like just, you know, this whole thing of like asking, really try and listen and probe more. So that really helped improve my podcast delivery. So no, I think there's definitely still areas to improve on, but I think it's come a long way since where it was. It's much more natural, much more of a conversation than a robotic. Question number one approach. So yeah, here's the next 300 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of next year you'll be on 52, another 52, so 3
we should be 310 at the end of the year, I think. And then, so next year it should be at least 370.
Wow.
Let's see. Yeah, even games just 1 a week. That's what I aim for. If any others come in, it's a bonus. So yeah. Any other questions?
That's all the questions done.
Perfect. Thanks so much for listening to episode 300. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed the previous 300, I'd love for you to leave a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you receive your podcasts. I really appreciate it. It'll help get the podcast seen, help us attract better, bigger, more guests for next year, but also help spread the mission that we're on to see our world transform one life-changing journey at a time. Appreciate all the listens. Thank you for following on the journey, and I look forward to the next 300.